Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Benny. Hi, Terry. Hi, King Tony. How are y'all doing today? We are honored and thrilled and very excited to talk with the King Madbutter today. King Madbutter, thank you for taking the time out of your Friday to join us. How are you today? Good afternoon.
I'm great, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to do this with you guys.
Me too. I have a ton of questions for you, and I think the more I learn about the AI Art Today crew, the more fascinated I am by all of you, and the more I want to know all of your backgrounds, just so I have a more clear picture of the group of people. Because you all are so knowledgeable, and you've really been here the whole time, King. So I don't want to dox you, but you do have your name pretty publicly other places.
I'm pretty doxed.
Okay, all right.
Robert Stratton.
Yes, sir.
In
okay,
another world,
all right. Yes,
teacher,
sir.
and yeah.
So
I liked the whole avatar thing for a long time. I thought
yeah.
it was great that you can kind of reinvent yourself, and maybe you don't have to. Because people pick up a lot of information about you when they kind of see a picture of you and know what they are. Like, and I don't.
Well, assume a lot
about,
of information. Pick up is the wrong
yes,
thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the problem. And
Uh-huh.
I do think that the avatar thing was very liberating in the sense that you could kind of reinvent who you were,
Absolutely.
or make certain aspects of yourself kind of neutral or not part of the picture. But it's too late for that for me.
I thought it was great for customer support too, just from Rad TV perspective of I never knew who I was speaking with, so I didn't make any projections onto whoever it was, and there was no assumption that just because they had X, some profile pic, they had understanding of whatever. You didn't know, you don't know how their age, you don't know anything about them, and can't make any assumptions. So you have to go in with this kind of clean slate, and it is, I think, very liberating, and it's something that I really enjoyed from 2020 to up until I think it kind of started to feel a bit washed like late 2023. But I still love that you're rocking a profile pic here that is representative of the art you create, and I think that is the future. And I know you say it's too old for that, but I think you're doing a great job branding yourself and your art. I went to, if you guys aren't hip, go to madbutter.com real quick on your phones. Go check it out. He has signed limited edition fine art prints that are beautiful, and some awesome works on his website, on Vimeo. I loved your Opia and your Creatures works. They're incredible. So this is what you're into and this is what you're doing. I think it's a good representation to have as a profile pic, and I think it does give me, once I get to know you a little bit better, it does give me some insight, and I can make some assumptions once I know the affiliation of, the relationship of your profile picture to you. It does say something. It just doesn't say something to people that don't know you, maybe.
Yeah, I feel that for sure. This particular profile pic was kind of just a fun jump on the whole giblification thing. It seemed like everybody in AI today, just kind of quickly redid their PFPs.
Right.
Do that just for fun because we knew it would be a cliche in 4 days or something like that. But with this one, it was kind of fun because one of my older PFPs was sort of a slightly ghoulish looking. I like weird and I like creepy.
I know you do. I know you do. I can tell. I see it in your art.
And so this made it a little bit cuter. I don't know, and also just in terms of doxing, there it is, bald guy with a goatee. That's me. But so I got to do that too. But it was fun. I think most folks in our group have already moved on from this thing, but I still kind of having fun with it for a little bit.
Sure, I'm still using NFT profile pics on my main accounts, and I use them for Rad. I think it's fun, and I don't like having my face plastered everywhere all the time. So King Stratton, I can't believe that you have been the trailblazer you are in AI over the last 4 years, and am so excited to get into that. But before we get there, I would love to learn more about your background. And I know you've been in New York for a long time, but from our conversations over the past year and getting to know you, hearing you speak to other people, you're very well traveled. You've lived all over the world, and I don't even know where to start. So wherever you're comfortable starting your journey, King, dive in, and I'm sure I'll have 1,000 questions for you. But I would love to get to know Robert Stratton, the younger version, maybe the bartender version, and how you got to where you are. And I know maybe we start with like your college days and where you went to school and your first foray into the digital art realm.
Yeah, if I can just even start just a quick
Please.
overpass of earlier, I think
Yeah.
one of the most kind of unusual things about my life that's really shaped it is I have lived all over the world. First, with my parents, moved every couple of years to a different country or a different continent, over and over again. That kind of really shaped me. I was born in Colombia. My parents were both, American citizens who were working in Colombia. So I'm not, Colombian in any sense, except that I was born there. But I was born in Cali, Colombia, and then lived in Ecuador and Peru for my first in South America for my first 6 years, and then we moved to the U.S. for 5 years. And I spoke fluent Spanish when I was
I was,
six
I was
years
like,
old.
just gonna ask, did you start? Is that what were you better at Spanish than English?
I was, and my parents apparently they tell me all the time that they use me to to talk to whatever the guy who came to the door, or
Right,
the
right.
maid, whatever the bus driver, whatever it is, because I could rattle away for a 6 year old. I mean, it wasn't. But weirdly enough, when I moved to the U.S., I lost that Spanish. I've been trying to regain it ever since. But I think something happened when I moved to this small town in New Jersey where I think psychologically that seemed weird. So like I was the blonde haired kid, who just came from South America, and I think I tried to fit in a way that's kind of embarrassing now. Like now I would be embracing that kind of
Sure, sure. Well, it's a
difference in
culture
things.
shift. It's so hard, the
Yeah.
past even 10 years. So,
Yeah, I didn't move to New York. I moved to New
right.
Jersey.
Yeah,
So it was like
yeah.
suburbia. So there was that, and then when I was 11, so then we a couple of years in New Jersey, a couple of years then in New York,
Were you
and
really
then
finding homes in these places? Did you feel like you were home and you were connecting with friends, or did you know I can't settle in? I'm out of here soon.
yeah, a little bit. So I mean, because then after New York, we went to Thailand for 5 years, and I then I came to the U.S. to go to school, to high school and college. But I do think all my life I've grown up with people that are from their hometown and they know exactly who they are. Like in terms of like, um, they're a Larchmont, New York kind of kid, and they've known people, the people they know, they've known ever since they can remember. And there's sort of a rootedness that I was always jealous of. But I'm also kind of pretty aware that the flip side to that is that I had, I've always had this immense ability to sort of make friends with people that are very different from me. That I been able to adapt and adjust to situations very easily. And I do think that it did cost something in a sense of like always trying to adapt to something else. Maybe it maybe kind of hurt the one idea that I admired in other people, that they were very rooted and very solid in who they were. I feel like a little bit of a chameleon.
Sure, of course. Well, and you were probably it's probably hard to see because there aren't so many people that are that well traveled at before they're 18 years old. So you were you had that but for the world, but and that's that'd be the dream for everybody to be able to experience all those different cultures up until they were 18. And now you said you moved back for high school. So you're like 14, 15 moving back, and did you
Yeah,
feel
15.
now, and that's in New York, right?
No, that was funny enough. My parents sent me off to boarding school, so I went
Uh-huh.
to Phillips Academy, which is like this very prestigious boarding school in Massachusetts, and that was kind of funny because by the time I left Thailand in 15, I was kind of like there were the little. I went to a international school there. It was actually during the Vietnam War in the 70s, right? So it was mostly military kids, but a lot of some foundation and like Ford Foundation and diplomat kids and all that. But a lot of military kids, and we were divided into like the social groups in the, in the early 70s were kind of like the nerds, the jocks, and the hippies, and the freaks
Sure,
we
sure.
used to call. And so I was with the freaks, you know. So when I showed up at Phillips Academy at Andover, and it was just like massive culture shock in a different way. I was back in the U.S., coming back to the U.S. regularly, so that wasn't a surprise. But was full of around sort of like, I don't know, the elite class, like I was telling jokes the other day on AI Today that I remember sitting around smoking some reefer. Can I even say that
Yeah,
on the show? I guess
yes,
so.
absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, say whatever you want, my king. Yeah.
with the people, who lived on my hallway, and like one was a Rockefeller, one was a DuPont,
Oh,
one was something else,
jeez.
this kind of thing. And
Gosh. Real money.
John Kennedy went there when I was there, and just like, so it was sort of this elite institution. And to tell you the truth, I didn't like it, because I was much more identified with this sort of counterculture kind of
Hmm.
idea. So when it came time to go to college, I switched gears and went to Oberlin College, which is about as opposite. I don't know if you know Oberlin, but it is a bastion of left wing weirdness.
Yeah, Oberlin, in
First
Ohio.
college, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm from Columbus. I'm from Ohio. I know Oberlin very well. Yeah.
Yeah, so first college to accept women, first college was
Yeah,
that
first Ohio's the first to do everything. Nobody knows,
yeah,
but
yeah,
Northwest Territory crushed it in every way, and
yeah,
Oberlin's amazing. It's a
yeah.
very rich culture there. So, what was your experience like there? When did you come to Oberlin?
So I really loved it. So I was there from 78 to 82, graduated in 82. And then that's when I felt like I found my people. They say like 75% of Oakland's from New York.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's probably true. So when I left Oberlin, moved to New York, I had a circle of maybe, 30, 40, 50 people in New York in the Lower East Side that were Oberlin graduates, and then Oberlin graduate. There was like a whole nother posse of crossover people with Columbia graduates, and then a couple of other schools. And somehow my circle became really, really big with these interlapping circles of, and then there was like the musicians and the whole punk rock new wave scene was going nuts. And I got, job. That whole Lower East Side time when I lived in the some dive tenement on 10th and B, then 9th and A, then Eldridge and Lower East Side. And, it was a super exciting time. It was terrifying in some ways. I mean, you feared for your life every time you walked home to your apartment. But,
Jeez. Like
in other
literally,
ways,
like are you on full on guard, eyes full alert,
just
all over?
I don't think for your life, but I got held up 3 or 4 times,
Hmm.
knife point and stuff, once at gunpoint. And that just happened. And I remember once coming home, and then I worked till 4 in the morning. So I remember once coming home and
Yeah, that happens everywhere. I mean,
um,
bartenders are always in the most
yeah,
dangerous situation, leaving the bar with $500 in your pocket or some shit.
yes, exactly. And I remember once opening the lock on my door on 9th and A and opening the door, and some guy ran up on me and pushed me through the door, but then I grabbed him by the face and pushed him out. But also, I'm intoxicated. It's 5 in the
Sure.
morning to finish my shift. And I pushed him out. Meanwhile, a cop car pulls up. Says, "What the hell's going on here?" And I'm like, "This guy's trying to break, trying to bug me, blah blah blah." And the guy's like, "No, no, this guy just came and pushed my face." He's trying to say that like I'm some sort of weird face pushing maniac who attacked him. And the cop just looks at us and goes, "Go, just leave. Everybody leave."
I have real things to deal with. Get out of here.
Yeah, yeah. But so I bartended all over the East Village. I was at this Japanese restaurant called Dojo's, which was pretty great institution in the 80s. Um, Served lots of artists, the famous, like soy burgers with this orange carrot dressing, and the people that worked there were really fun, all East Village characters. And so that was pretty wild. And then I ended up at Second Street and Avenue A, a dive bar there that I worked at for like almost 10 years.
Very
Um,
cool. What kind of art were you tracking? You're traveling all over the world in your adolescence. What kind of things were you paying attention to? Was it Western culture, and you were just locked in on, the world that you were, air quotes, connected to in, familially, but not presently, or your life yet? What were you paying attention to? Were you locally enthused there with their culture and art? What were you paying attention to?
Absolutely. I would say that my parents were both very art inclined.
Hmm.
My mom wrote 3 books on Thai art.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And then my dad was the photographer on those books, and they went all around the country dragging us kids around. There were three of us, and off to temples off in the middle of somewhere where my dad would photograph this thing, and my mom would. She ran the sort of the Farang, the foreigner, museum group, which was brought in to sort of assist the National Museum of Thailand with some sort of foreign art history expertise. So she ran that group for a little while. So all my parents' friends were people that were very involved in, for instance, in Thai art. We were there. And then they moved to Nigeria, and then the Philippines, and then Guatemala, and then
This is without you?
Canada. Yeah, this is
Okay.
while I'm going to boarding
Yeah.
school.
Okay. Okay.
And also super involved in whatever historical art was part of that culture. But I would also say my parents also pretty much liked modern art, and I grew up being a huge fan of particularly modern art. I remember first time I saw Warhol, I got so excited. Spent a long time in the New York phase studying printmaking, and it was all because I love Warhol so much. And so I learned how to silk screen, and I learned how to do this. Ended up working at the School of Visual Art in the mid 80s. So I did that for a long time too while I was bartending, and did a lot of silk screen art.
What did you major in, if you don't mind sharing?
So Oberlin's a liberal arts, classic liberal arts college. So I kind of took all the courses I wanted, and then I tried to make a mess. I tried to organize the mess of different things I was doing.
As one
And
does.
it turns out I satisfied two majors, and one major was communications, and the other major was it's a single major, but it's a combined studio art history major.
Very cool.
So actually, I was doing even silk screen. I love silk screen at Oberlin. I studied I took many, many courses, and some of my favorite courses were contemporary art theory courses. And in the communications side, a lot of communications is supposedly about advertising and marketing and that sort of thing. Here, there was a really interesting professor who studied both Jungian psychology and postmodern, theory. So I actually racked up a whole bunch of communication courses, just taking every course he
Very
offered.
cool.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. So communications is kind of a weird angle there. I remember I have a friend who laughs every time he says communications. I say communications.
It's almost like you've been training for what you do today your whole life, King.
I feel like it. I think there's a through line somehow.
Oh man, I mean, communication and art, that's literally what you do every morning. And like, you found the place that I feel, you are the trailblazer here. And I'm so excited to get into this. So, you started doing screen printing. I see you're actually doing your own prints now on your website. And I know I mentioned that earlier, madbutter.com. If anybody hasn't went there, he has artist signed limited edition prints, and it is beautiful. It's amazing. So what was your first step into the professional world with your own creative prowess?
Oh, so one thing, even when I was still at Oberlin before moving to New York, a friend of the family's got me a job at a professional printmaking studio where we worked on some of the top artists today. Rauschenberg and Larry Rivers, and it's like a handful of other really great artists. And it was, they did etching, lithography, and silkscreen. And I worked in the silkscreen thing, being the intern. And I always joke I'd be a much smarter person today if I didn't kill half my brain cells, because back then it was all oil ink, and So I did have this weird professional thing before even my own art, or working in a really high quality professional printmaking studio, doing the separations and doing all that kind of stuff, and running the silkscreen machine with a couple other people. And cleaning lots of screens with very toxic chemicals.
Sure. That's half the time.
The cleaning table, we'd just wipe it down and we'd have lunch on it. And I think
oh my gosh. Gosh.
So any lapses of memory or whatever that
I feel like this is how you got to creating your art that you create today.
That's maybe it also gave me that special little bit of dementia that is the perfect thing
I
whatever it
mean, these
means.
are special, and they feel, they feel yours, and I feel the few conversations that we've had, and I've heard you speak on your art. That was kind of your first foray. We shared that post yesterday of DeepMind stuff, and you kind of got it right away. You said the Dolly thing, so I'd love to know where your head was at, as you're in New York, and where are you? How are you envisioning the art world at this time? Are you even picturing the digital world? Are you thinking this is where it's headed? Where's your mind at while you're doing these experiments and working fresh out of college with an art degree?
So I think the one through line here is that I always liked photography and screen printing. And if you want to say the negative thing, is it's because you get to do a lot of processing and you don't have to like hand draw, or you don't, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I always was self-conscious that I was terrible at those kinds of art, and I liked tinkering with processes and tools. And so I think even my early love of photography, all the photography I did was how can I manipulate the photography even in the dark room or in the camera to make it like I wasn't a street photographer. I wasn't trying to capture the world. I was trying to mess with photography. I loved, like cyanotypes, blueprinting and
Hmm.
and photograms and all these other sort of, parallel photography techniques and mushing around Polaroid, pictures with your fingers and doing Xerox art, all that kind of stuff. Anything that involved process, I loved. This is even way before I got into digital. But then I started working at the School of Visual Arts in the printmaking department,
Hmm.
and did that for about 5 years while I was bartending, and used that to support all the sill screening I did. The sill screening I was doing back then, what I would do is I would photograph TVs with bad channels that had lots of static on them and like warping heads and images and stuff like that. So in other words, you know how on a TV, like if you knock it, the head kind of
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
a wavy line.
Hmm.
So I would photograph that and then make sill screens out of TV distorted, recognizable
That's
imagery, but
fire. I love
distorted.
this. This
Yeah,
is
it was
incredible.
really fun. It was really good stuff. I started that at Oberlin actually, and then that was my genre. That was my art for almost all those early years
Where were you selling?
of printmaking. You know what? It wasn't really selling, to tell you the truth. There were
Hmm.
some East Village galleries that would show your stuff, and it'd be group shows and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't really, never successful enough to really have like solo shows or anything like that, to be honest.
Sounds really cool, and I would love to see that today. I think it's like some analog art that would go on a T-shirt that I think would impress a lot of people today because of the process that it would take to make it happen. I mean, you'd have to find an old CRT TV, you'd have to have a good signal coming in, and be able to manipulate that, and still have your maybe using film. Sounds great. I would buy one of these right now, Mad Butter. We need this on madbutter.com.
Yeah, I wish I had more. So it was really fun because you can, because Sill Screen, for instance, is all about creating tone through halftone. I mean, that's the big technique to create it because you're actually printing, solid spot ink, and but you create the illusion of tone by, in the Warhol sense, you sort of mask out the various shapes, or you don't mask them. You let the shapes, solid abstract shapes that bleed, and then you print the halftone image of the person, which is on top of it, and it creates this sort of like somewhere between a painting and a photograph, but it's very altered. So I do think that this whole idea that me coming from Warhol was that like when you take one of these distorted faces that kind of is 4 times taller than it is wide, kind of because the TV is stretching it, and it kind of waves like 3 times, and it's someone's eyeballs and they're talking, but it looks like they're screaming because the distortion is really strange and
Hmm.
it's really weird and strange. It also reduces to in the TV dots a sort of like parallel halftone, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It does the same thing, creates gray values and creates shading and all that kind of stuff. I would posterize it slightly so that you got a couple different, you were able to get some real range out of it. So it made it a little bit, you could actually tell that it was a person and all that. Sometimes I did pure static pieces, which is just fun. I was really fascinated by static.
That's
you know, what
interesting.
static was
Yeah,
and what it
yeah.
represented and stuff,
Uh-huh. Very
and what sort
interesting.
of, you know, signal distortions were and all that. Um, yeah. So the thing is that while I'm working at the printmaking department, we're on the 7th floor. On the 10th floor was the brand new MFA computer art, you know, Masters in Computer Art program. And they all came down because they wanted to make silk screens of their work, and they were entitled to because, you know, same school. Um, and so I became friends with all of them. They all invited me up to show their, you know, show off that this, you know, right. You know, it was like these Macs that cost $10,000 that were just a little box. You know, like it was like
Yeah.
the dawn of computer art. But I instantly saw the kind of connection with everything that I was doing, the love of process, the love of tinkering with different things, and the computer just automated all that stuff. So I just spent as much time hanging out with those folks as possible. And then in 1990, um, I, you know, I stopped working in the printmaking department and got my and went upstairs and got the MFA computer art degree.
Oh, wow.
So that was
Very
fun. No,
cool.
just I just feel like you know, like I said, I was a kind of a bad learner at Phillips Academy Andover and a really good learner at Oberlin because I found my groove.
Yep.
And you know, even my grades and all that
You got
went
to learn
through
how
the
you
roof.
learn. I think that's the first thing
Yeah,
you learn at, you know, you get out of regular education is how you have to figure out how you learn. And you did that. Boom.
exactly. But when I went to the MFA I don't think I ever absorbed, you know, as much information quickly as I did then. I mean, every day was just like,
What was that? What was it for you? Was it being hands on and doing the thing, or what was the thing that clicked for you? Just doing what you loved?
yeah, you know, it was a lot of theory about computer art and digital, you know, the history of digital art and systems art and process art. It was, you know, a bunch of learning different software and very complicated machines. It was also just some very, you know, very early intro into just, you know, back then computers were hard to run, you know, like you had to know, you know, you had to know command line interfaces and a few things, you know. I never got that good at it. There was some programming classes. Um, but I do remember one course. People at AIR today will know that John Simon is a pretty well-known artist, and he's a you know he comes on the space regularly. He loves AIR today, but even though he's a couple years younger than me, he was one of my teachers in one of the most influential classes, and he did sort of the whole history of communications and thought, like you know cybernetics and the difference engine and you know what's his name Babbage and all these early thinkers and Ada Lovelace and Turing and all the way through the invention of the microprocessor. He did this course that was just like this master course in understanding everything about the history of technology and its relationship to art. And then he was also my thesis advisor on my course there. So it's nice that AI Today folks you know who he is. John Simon. He's
Very
went
cool.
on to become a pretty famous artist,
Yeah, he's got his
and
website. Very
yeah,
cool.
he's a good friend. Yeah, he's a good friend. And today, you know, we've in touch. He was my thesis advisor. What is it?
Really
30 years
cool.
ago, 40 years ago now, 30 years ago. So
Very
yeah,
interesting. So, like, you met these people, and now you have your master's. Where did you go to school for that?
the master's was at SVA in the upstairs in that same
Okay.
department that where the folks came downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my bachelor's at Oberlin, and then I got my master's 10 years after that. You
Right.
know, in at the School of Visual Arts, Masters of Fine Art and
So,
Computer Art.
and what job are you doing while you're going to school there?
I'm still bartending for
Cool.
money.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
I
what?
totally paid for it. My parents helped me a little bit, but mostly I paid for the whole. Back then, you could. There was tuition was 11 grand a year or something like that.
Awesome. And
And
I think you shared before, so I'm not sharing something you haven't shared. I hope that you remember sharing this. But like you said, you were paying like $100, and you said the word like tenement. I'm not familiar with that. Can you explain like what was your living situation like in Lower East Side? And did you have roommates? Was it were you guys out all the time? You guys just out till 4 o'clock in the morning bartending and living the bartender lifestyle that I'm very familiar with?
yeah, in that lower East Side phase, particularly before I got a little more serious, working at FBA and then going to my master's program. I lived on 10th and B with my old Oberlin roommate. That was really fun. We lived in utter, I have to say, an utterly trashed bachelor kind of a lifestyle that is appalling to me now. But yeah, we spent tons and tons of time going to galleries and to clubs and going to Film Forum and watching, every avant-garde, Godard and Fassbinder and Herzog movie ever made. We were definitely like slumming, like, art school kids,
Mm-hmm.
kind of hanging out in the Battle Lower East Side. We loved some of the, sort of divier. There was ABC No Rio and the Rivington School and a bunch of other a lot of real sort of crazy characters there. But the whole music scene was exploding. And so there was always tons and tons of stuff to do. As a bartender, very connected to all this stuff, it did feel a little bit like, East Village royalty. And it's kind of stupid now, but thinking about it, I could walk into any bar in the Lower East
Sure.
Side and drink for free,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
because I could return the favor and get treated like,
It's a pretty good
something.
life. If you're bartending,
Yeah,
you're really
that's
locked
not
in. It's a
bad.
pretty good run.
I think you do kind of recognize at a certain point that there's not really a future in this, like that,
Yeah.
and also that the lifestyle does take its toll.
Absolutely.
And
Eating
certainly
dinner at
lifestyle.
4:30 is not always awesome,
Yeah, I mean, we were 12-hour shifts, and that was the official shift, 4 to 4. You had to get there at 3, and usually at 4 o'clock we pulled the gate down, and whoever was in there could kind of drink for free for another hour and a half. So it was an extraordinary 16 hours. I was there when I was working by myself. I was the only person working there for most of the time.
So you graduated in 90? Is that when you actually graduated, or was that when you went
92.
back? 92.
92.
So great. So 92, I think about this often, and I actually thought about it when we had a space with you, and Mars was saying, like, he's like, we have an expert. We have somebody who's been here for literally 30 fucking years and paying attention to AI the whole time. So 92 is very interesting that you graduated then with your knowledge of computers and so focused on computers, and Lawnmower Man comes out. Were you even thinking about AI? Was that a conversation you guys were having as you're playing with these computers and thinking about the future, or are you guys just looking at art and then pop culture starts seeding these ideas? What was your energy on like the future of computing as you were wrapping your head around the computers of the time?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I'm old enough that I remember there's a book I keep pushing on the AI Art Today audience, which I read in school that John Simon had me read, called Mind Children by Hans Moravec. And he's the head of robotics at Carnegie Mellon. And he wrote this utterly like crazy vision of the future where we would transfer that the idea of Mind Children is that he sees our role as God, as gods to replace us with a master race of immortal, inorganic machines that have our intelligence. And he wrote this I think in the 80s. I think in the 80s. I don't have the book right here. Keep it by me at all times. And he wrote this incredible vision. He called it artificial intelligence. All his definitions about art we wouldn't recognize today because kind of
I don't like the definitions today, so
yeah.
maybe that's good. I don't know.
So I would say Hans Moravec made a huge impression, but I would say also that in that culture that I jumped in after being in the MFA computer art department, there was I would say other words kind of were my keywords. For instance, hyperlinking and
Are you thinking like, is this like Xanadu energy?
yeah, Xanadu energy,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Like in Nelson and all that stuff. We studied
Yeah,
Nelson and all that.
I have one of the original of his books of Ted. My one of my good friends is actually the keeper of his estate. Very cool.
Absolute visionary. It turns out one of my good Oberlin friends went on to study, to start Macromind Director, which became Macromedia, and Mark Cantor, and he became the CEO of pretty big media companies. So I left on to director pretty quickly and did a lot of learned kind of my thing. I was like never a great programmer, never like the best designer, but macromedia director, you could write write in this fairly easy to use scripting language and create all these, CD-ROM presentations. And so that's what I started working in, designing sort of, interactive CD-ROMs where everything was hyperlinked and you could navigate your own way through the information. It wasn't like a sit down and watch a video. You could, you could navigate through these interactive CD-ROMs. I worked for probably the dominant company of the time in that thing, Voyager, and then ended up doing for a couple other companies. Voyager is associated with the Criterion Collection. Same parent company. This guy Bob Stein ran Voyager, kind of a visionary thinker about what you call like first of all self-publishing, that all these tools would democratize that whole idea of who could publish things like books and what was going to replace books, which is going to be interactive CD-ROMs,
Which they did for a little. I mean, it felt like it took off for a little bit. I was clicking through those as a kid, and enjoyed things like that were an experience with a couple of CDs.
So I authored and worked usually with a designer, paired with a designer. I did about 7 titles for Voyager.
Wow.
And did one for Microsoft called Gayhem Wilson's Haunted House, which I'm still really proud of. The artist Gahan Wilson.
Yeah.
We did an amazing, CD-ROM game for that. And I was pretty excited about that. That was like, I was still, at this point, after I graduated from School of Visual Arts, like a year after I graduated, they hired me to teach there, which is kind of unusual. It kind of goes to show you how young the whole thing was, because the idea that you'd be qualified to teach a year after you graduate is pretty ridiculous. You're supposed to be a PhD legend or something in it.
You were. But to the people that were learning from you, you were.
But I was pretty good at this director and Flash and all that kind of stuff. So I taught programming and interactivity and all that kind of stuff. I turned that around and started teaching at SVA for a number of years. Then I was also working for Voyager, for a couple other companies that built these CD-ROMs, and that was kind of exciting. And then a bunch of SVA graduates get together and decide we're going to form our own CD-ROM, development company. There's some designers, some programmers, and a couple business people. So 5 of us formed this company. 5 SVA graduates. Well, 4 SVA graduates and 1 teacher.
You're the teacher, right?
No. That was one of our teachers from, and this is including me. Yeah, I was a teacher by that point. And we started this company, called it Rare Medium. And the next thing we know, we're designing beautiful CD-ROMs for doing them through Rare Medium for Voyager and these other companies for a little while. But then people keep calling us up and asking us if we do any of this, ever heard of the World Wide Web and, in HTML. And we're like, yeah, okay. And we try it, and it's pretty easy to figure out. And we have really good designers. And back then there was this tool called Debabbilizer. So the whole idea was how to reduce a very good looking color photograph into like a GIF palette of 12 or 64, different images, by bit. Doing it so that it would take less bandwidth, so it would go over one of these, modems at the time.
Right.
And so we got really good at using Debabbilizer, which we had, to basically shrink the size down of web pages down to 2K for this massive, beautiful website that had all this color imagery on it. And so people kept throwing money at us. I'm like, no, we're making these very, groovy, artsy CD-ROMs. And we do this thing. We did something for General Mills. We did some stuff for Pampers and for all things. And Tanqueray Gin, or all kinds. They kept saying these big advertising companies would call us up and say, you guys know this, how to work this digital imagery stuff. Will you do this stuff? So next thing we know, we're a web company, and completely sideways accidentally. And the next thing we know, we go from the 5 of us in the first year. I think we did $1 million of business. It was crazy. And we went to 25 people in 1 year. And then within 5 years, we had, over 1,000 people and 10 offices around the world.
Let's go. That's amazing.
It was just nuts.
Yeah,
it was
so
out of control.
Keep going. I want to hear more about that. That is an incredible story. So this is your jump off point. You really found like real success here. And is it what are you enjoying what you're doing? Are you being the creative that you envisioned yourself being?
I loved it, even though it meant I stopped being an artist, and generated commercial art, commercial, whatever, clients and images and design. But it was really challenging, and it was exciting, and like I had no money, and so this is the first time in my life I had money. Then it got to the point. So, and it was also super challenging to go from the five of us to, let's say, 100 employees. After 100, the suits came in. We brought in an absolute bulldog in the space, like the most incredible businessman I've ever dealt with, but also incredible manipulator and incredible. He walked away with all the money, of course, and everything, most of the money and everything else. And we did okay, but he at this time, all in the what do you call it, Silicon Alley, New York. The whole New York world of things. People were rapidly, these small little startups like we were getting rapidly bought up by the bigger companies. Like Razorfish, pretty big, and so did. And then they made deals with the giant advertising conglomerates like WPP and Omni, whatever it's called, and all the big giants all had divisions down to scrape. Who he said no. He says we're not going to get bought up. Though he had half deals with half of the companies in New York doing the buying up. He had strung them all along, but he said no. We're the ones who were going to buy it. Managed to raise hundreds of millions of dollars from all these venture firms and do all that. The thing that was bad was meanwhile, we are the founders are kind of saying, okay, you run this little bit of New York thing. Don't worry your pretty little heads about this, this bigger business we're building. So it got to the point where I'd be reading we acquired a company in the New York Times, and no one had ever asked me or told me about it.
That's amazing.
And one of the founders. So at some point, we just went off to do a skunk works, and he said, look, you guys are really unhappy right now. Like, I'll tell you what, here's your golden handcuffs. Here's a great salary. Here's whatever. You guys just work and do your whatever is in this building over there. So we did that for about a year and a half before I couldn't stand it anymore. Like being, and that was in the late 90s. By the time we built the company up over 8 years, and so I left. And meanwhile, the company's stock is doubling every couple of weeks, and it went from 10 to 20, then 20 to 30, then 30 to 40, and 40 to 50.
And this is 98, so this is post crash. You guys are really doing it.
No. Pre-crash.
Okay.
Crash was 2001.
Oh, okay. Second crash, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole thing is going nuts. I am broke, so I'm selling my shares. I'm really telling you what a fool I am. And sure enough, the stock doubles the next week and stuff like that. So, but finally, when I leave, I'm pretty much out of my shares. But at this point, I'm not one of the, nobody cares that I'm selling because I'm not the CEO and I'm not the CTO. Because you have to be careful about selling then. So I sold 3/4 of the way out. And the thing went from $120 a share. It took about 4 months to under $1 a share.
Wow.
Oh, and then they did a reverse 10-to-1 split to get it, because we want to be a penny stock, and then it went under, even after 10-to-1. It went under $1 a share.
Oh
again.
My goodness!
So those there's hundreds of millions of dollars of value that kind of disappeared during that dot-com crash. It was kind of a nutty story.
That is insane. Oh my gosh.
And I would say the big guy managed to secret out a lot. I mean, that's another story. But it was actually a huge financial.
The big guy. You're not using his name. I respect that. Is he still known businessman today? And that's.
I look up on him every once in a while. On some level, he made my life miserable, and other, I am incredibly grateful. I have to admit
that's how good business works. Usually,
he made the whole thing happen.
Yeah.
So that's a funny story there. But
It's
I
an
had enough
awesome
to
story.
buy
Thank you
a
for sharing that.
brownstone in Brooklyn. I
Let's
had
go.
send my kids through through high school and college, and enough to buy kind of that's 30 years ago. Kind of burned through most of that, but I've been able to have pretty successful life, start other businesses, do other things based on that success. So
Very cool. So when did it become, and I'm sorry to like go back into the story a little bit, and I thank you so much for sharing. Anybody who's listening, we have Madbutter here. Our king has been an artist for 30 plus years. He's traveled the world. He's been all over the place from being born in Colombia, Ecuador, moved to Ecuador and Peru, spoke as good as Spanish as he did English, was translating for his English speaking parents in South America. Then they moved to New Jersey. They moved to Thailand. He's just told us a crazy story of building up a huge company through the 90s and then the value tanking of hundreds of millions of dollars down to where it's not even a penny stock. And the whole first 45 minutes of this has been amazing and very excited to continue talking. So I want to ask a question, go back a little bit. When did it become work for you and you start to lose interest in the passion part of the business you were building? Like what do you have a moment that you see or a task or a new, responsibility that was just like, fuck this, I don't want to do, this isn't what I signed up for? Is there something that stands out, or was it just everything added up over time and you wanted to change as creatives do often?
yeah, I do think it was. I try to call it that epiphany moment where where it's come to the point where I'm reading about what our company's doing in the New York Times, and I realize how marginalized I was in the company, and I also, the whole time I'm super proud of particularly being hands on and working grueling hours, and just got married too, and it was hard on my wife because it was startup thing. The thing is it got to be a point where that eased off because we became a much bigger company with a whole layer of business people over us creatives. And in a way, I was so happy to let go of the. I have never had a business sensibility, and I've never been good at any of the things like hiring and firing, and and discipline, and whatever. I'm just because I was bohemian. That was my outlook, and we should all get along, kind of thing. So I hated that aspect of the business. I was happy to let it go, but at some point I realized that you need to do that to, you know, to be in charge of your company. You need to be tough and you need to make those kinds of decisions. And I realized it had all gone away, and I realized the joy had left in it, and the money was too good to leave, but it was joyless. So when we kind of got the exit, I took it, and then it just turned out to be the luckiest thing ever, the luckiest timing ever. So that's what happened. And after I did that, I was looking around again, like I haven't really done my art for a while. Started to pick up the art a little bit again, but then I met a friend through another Oberlin friend who was his company got bought by Razorfish, our competitor, and he had an amazing company. And I've known this guy for years, get bumping into parties, because we have our mutual friend, and he's an electrical engineer genius. His name's Leo, and his company built prototypes of electronic equipment. Leo never graduated from high school, but he's an electrical engineer genius. And his company's something kinetics. Was it something kinetics? I just can't remember right now. Anyway, bought by Razorfish, and then he ended up leaving. So he had a similar .com cash out experience, and he wanted to create a technology themed bar. And he had got this other partner who was an architect to come up with this bar. And I said, I had the same idea, electronic. Anyway, we get together and we create the Remote Lounge in the 2000s, which is a technology themed bar based on telepresence and sort of surveillance technology, where you can, spy on one part of the bar. Well, first, to raise the money for that, we did this project for this eccentric multimillionaire, Josh Harris, who owned Jupiter Communications. And Josh Harris kind of went nuts. He's worth maybe like $500 million or something like that, and now he's destitute. I don't know, homeless person in Las Vegas, but that's another story. At the time, he kind of took all this money and wanted to create all this technology interactive happenings. So we built a camera system, a 24-hour a day, 30 camera surveillance system in his loft. So this is a Leo, the electrical engineer. Another guy, Kevin, who was pretty good at, building stuff, and me on the sort of design, art side. And so this thing ran for a year, destroyed his marriage, got a ton of attention. There's a whole documentary movie on it. We Live in Public. And basically he streamed his life from 30 different cameras in every single, part of his massive loft on Broadway and, Lower Broadway.
This is incredible.
And
this is real life Truman locked in.
Yeah. So he had this whole idea that, there's no privacy anymore. And then he decided to live this dream. And, it was kinky. Like he had, saunas and he had cameras in the toilets. It was like kind of gross, to tell you the truth.
Hey, sounds like a lot of sales. Genitals. Sounds like a lot of people would buy it. I don't know. Sounds like content that would go really hard today.
And he's definitely like this maniac. He had created a whole sort of New Year's Eve party where 40 artists lived in these see-through plastic tubes for 2 months together in this in an environment, and they had a shooting range and weird performance art and stuff like that. So we all jumped onto this to basically build the technology that became Remote Lounge. And Remote Lounge was basically kind of funny because it was really old tech, because the new tech was expensive. And one of my partners, Kevin, he was particularly good at we bought like an old cable TV, matrix switcher, whatever you call it,
DMX.
Cable TV system. Yeah. And then bought all these old cameras and old TVs, stripped the TVs out, put them in these consoles. And the idea was that you could spy on everybody else in the place, just like the old telephone bars in the 60s where, there's a number above every table and a telephone at every table. And there's those girls over there on table 37. You ring them up and they would answer and you'd say something flirty and stupid. This was a big thing in the 50s and 60s. So our version was using, surveillance technology. We also did a lot of other stuff. Like, for instance, at this point, digital art, is getting to be really big. I'm using Max MSP a lot to do real-time video. So we did a lot of sort of interactive video showcases for this kind of emerging breed of digital artists, which were people that mixed video real time. ResolMe and a bunch of these other VDMX and all these other sort of live video mixing tools became a thing. VJs became a thing.
Yeah.
And I VJ'd, I had a regular little VJ thing in my own bar because who's going to tell me no, it's my own bar. I was a VJ, these waffles sure do taste delicious. VJ name.
That's amazing. It's great.
And I made everybody call me that, like they couldn't just say Bob or whatever. So, which is pretty funny. They'd start up, Bob, what? I said, no. And they'd have to say that.
How popular did this bar get? I'm on the website right now looking over
Is
Remote
there
Lounge.
Still a website for
if you type in Remote Lounge, it comes up. It's the Fernex.com.
Yeah, Ferneckes.
Ferneckes, okay. Yeah, and then
Ferneckes is my friend Leo.
Okay.
Leo Ferneckes is his name.
And I mean, this looks incredible. I mean, it's got all these little stations, these little pods, 2 seats at each one. And
it was super fun. I would say it's the only bar that ever got featured in National Geographic, Time Magazine, Popular Science, and People Magazine.
Yahoo. I mean, you guys really let like every nook of society. You guys touched everything here.
But you know what we didn't have in this company? We didn't have the big guy who made the finances work.
Sure. So how long did this run, and this seems to be very successful too?
It ran for 6 years, super hard, and then 4 years of painful death, of declining sales and interest, and everything fell apart, and we lost interest. Before it became, now it's Bowery Electric, a very trendy bar, which I'm still a part owner of.
Very cool. Very cool. So VJ, and did you ever take that seriously or go beyond that? Or it was just that bar and that time that it was.
Just that time, I tried
Yeah.
to get played a little bit. I tried to create a whole video series that that we get top video talent in there. My wife curated a digital video kind of festival, which we called X Fest, which I was particularly proud of. We got all the top, sort of live videos, kind of live cinema, live video. This had a bunch of different names, a talented people using these tools to generate, you often with a band or with some sort of musical or electronic music, kind of real time kind of generating kind of thing. There was an organization called Share, which was pretty good, which I peripherally went to a few of their things, but they would do live VJ and electronic music sets using things like Max MSP with maybe 20 visualists and 20 musicians all, vibing and jamming and processing each other's, signals. So that was kind of like a really cool early, the 2000s, the aughts.
The odds. Nobody says that anymore. I said it for a while. I said it for a while and tried to make it a thing in my life, but nobody else.
A better way to put it? I don't know.
Nobody would take it. Nobody would accept me saying odds. They're like, get out of here. It's not making that happen. All right. So 4 years, fun. 4 years of hard decline failure. What year was that when it ended?
So by the time I moved to Thailand and back to Thailand in 2011.
Interesting.
And so
just by choice, just I'm going to Thailand. See you later. I'm out.
Well, that's kind of another story. There's Leo, as it declined, invents this thing called SensaCell, which is an interactive lighting system that exists on like a tile, a flat tile. It's got a number of LEDs on it that we made a few different form factors, and they can be connected to each other into arrays of limitless size. And they have software in it that you can sort of program LED lighting patterns.
I mean, this is like I said DMX, but I think you're probably familiar with that. Like, is that what this is? The early version of that?
It was. Yeah. It wasn't actually DMX, but related technology and ArtNet. ArtNet and all these different are related protocols. He built his own protocol, but he had capacitive sensors he built on the top, meaning you don't have to touch the tiles, and you could put glass or usually some kind of frosted thing to diffuse the LEDs, and a very coarse LED. So it's not so much images. You could do images, but very coarse ones, very low res ones. And the thing is, you could trigger the SensaCell through this thing. So he was doing this. I helped him the whole time, and then at some point he says, I told him about how great Thailand was. I'd been back a bunch of times since I lived there as a kid. And he went there with this new, with his work partner, and they ended up buying a house and loving Thailand. But then, figuring out how to get there and all that. And finally, he says, "Look, since this is going to be a company, we're going to move to Thailand. Will you want to come? Will you go bring your family? And this is why I have a family. I have kids." He said, "Will you move to Thailand?" And I said, "Oh, let me run it by the wife." She was, "Oh boy, I don't know." And it's cool. So we moved to Thailand, and we ended up supposed to be there a year. We ended up being there for 7 years. And one of the super weird, cool things about that is my daughter, for instance, my son's a little bit younger than that in terms of the linkage, kind of went there the same age that I went there when I was, went there when she was 11, left when she was 16.
Amazing. So you guys kind of got to share the same childhood in a way. And like, how could that have happened? That's a very rare thing to happen with your circumstances.
And the spooky thing was I went to international school in Bangkok, which was the big school back in the 70s. And Thailand has this waves of sort of xenophobia where they like stop, like sort of like all the foreigners got to stop poisoning our, wonderful Thai way of life, and they make it very hard to be there as a foreigner. And then it loosens and opens up, liberal and back and forth. Well, one of these things, ISB was kicked out of the center of Bangkok and told it could still exist, but it had to go to this campus on the outskirts of Thailand. And so when we got there in 2011, ISB was actually in this weird, talk about the Truman Show. It's like this compound where there's like a Starbucks and a church and golf carts and, and nothing but Americans, living there, and it's like a nightmare, you know. That's literally the school I went to. But in the old campus, a UN school, a UN organization had taken over and started the school, and that's where my kids went. It's called NIST International School of Thailand, and so my daughter and my son were in the same buildings I was in.
Wow.
It's so crazy.
That
in
is
2011,
crazy.
that I was there in 71.
Wow.
73 or 73. And literally, the school changed massively. They built all kinds of things, but I could still remember, oh, that's when I snuck off, smoked a joint when I was 13. That's when I did that.
How did the kids take moving from New York? That's a pretty drastic change coming from a whole life in New York to up and go to Thailand at 11.
Well, I think it was a little bit harder for my son, but I think they loved the school and they loved it. And then Thailand is a great place to be even a young teenager, because it's incredibly safe, and you can kind of get away with stuff that you can't get away with in New York without there being consequences.
Sure.
Like my kids would roam the city just like I did. I knew every inch of that city, knew every bus line, knew every whatever. I just roam. Me and my friends would just go explore another part and wander around, explore things, and it's safe that way. It's really, you get in trouble in Bangkok, but you have to kind of look for it. You can go to these red light districts and get held up or whatever, or get hassled, but if you don't go to the sort of the creepy sort of nightlife, rough sides of Bangkok,
if you don't go where trouble usually happens, then,
and these places are notorious, and it seems like a lot of tourists go there specifically to go hang out there.
Sure.
But Thais are super sweet people and super generous and super friendly and accommodating, and all kinds of things. Like I know that you go to a store and you have your bicycle and you leave your bike, you don't lock it, and you leave your groceries with like a bottle of Jack Daniels in it, or something, or Johnny Walker. And you go into the store and buy stuff and come out half an hour later and you just take your bike away. Like, no, you'd never think that it would be in danger. It's crazy.
How is that even? Are the crime laws and punishments insane to where is it death if you steal a bike? I don't have any call. I don't have any.
I just think every single block is just packed full with people, with vendors and people on the street and doing stuff. So there is this incredible sort of natural protection surveillance network of people that look.
It's like a real neighborhood watch that's really in it.
Yeah. And there's the moto taxis guy that are kind of vigilante protectors of their block. The idea in Bangkok to go from one place to the other, you take the subway to the main artery, and then on the sois, the sub streets, you jump on the back of a motorcycle taxi, a guy in an orange or yellow or blue vest, depending on their street, and they zip you down the block, which would have taken 15 minutes to walk to the end of it, and they get you there in 3 minutes. And so you jump around on these, on these motor taxis all the time. They're fiercely protective, first of all, of their territory, in terms of don't try to be a rogue motorcycle taxi in someone else's place. They'll kick your ass. But also protective of the block and of, of the people on it. They all knew me by name. They know my kids by name. They make sure, it's like kind of crazy. It's kind of felt great. My kids walk to school by themselves. I'd go ask someone, say, "Hey, did you see my kid?" Yeah. And, right then, right up. It's like, everything's cool, everything's fine.
How many languages do you speak? Like, even if you just a little, so Spanish, or how many languages have you spoken?
I spoke Spanish terribly and Thai terribly, and that's it. I don't know. I have some block against languages. I think that the reason I have block against languages is because that one psychological trauma of coming to the U.S. and feeling like a weirdo, or maybe I'm just bad at languages. It's a shame. I should speak lots of languages. I'd be so
no. I just was on a space with you guys, and everybody in there saying only language you need today is English, and you can code, you can do everything, and we can translate it to anywhere else. So I love the idea of learning more languages, and I would love to do it one day in my life, but I would have to have a real need. I'd have to be like immersed in the culture and know I was going there for some extended period of time to really even want to sink into it. Otherwise, it's, use some translator app or something is what I'd probably do. So King, you are back in Thailand. How long were you there? What years was this?
So 2011 to 2019.
Wow,
That
wow.
was
Okay,
almost 8 years. My family came a little later. They came in 2012
okay. And
while we were transitioning.
did your family stay the whole time? Did your and you don't have
Yep.
to share this. So did they didn't leave and go to college or
Oh
whatever?
yes, yes, yes. My daughter did leave for the last year, and she went off to university in the Netherlands, which was really cool. So she had, I think, this fantastic. She had um, school in Brooklyn, had a whole number of years here, and then 6 years in Thailand, and then 2 years in university in Netherlands. So it's very cool.
It is really cool that you got to give them a piece of your childhood, and it just happened, serendipitously and a God moment, just coincidence of your life and the path you had taken lands you in Thailand, and then they get to go to the same school. It's such a crazy story. It's insane.
I mean, it didn't have to go that way necessarily, but it is utterly striking to me when I hear them talk about their childhood. It is with the same excitement about them being in a place that is, pretty different from what most people, Americans get to live in, and with the same kind of sense of adventure and excitement about their, exploring and hanging out and doing stuff there.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of, want to bring it home to some AI stuff. We've got about 50 minutes left, and I won't take more of your time than that, as promised. Um, I asked you about Lawnmower Man earlier, and now we're up to 2019. I know that you have been speaking at NFT NYC. I'm guessing over these 10 years, you're super into tech. You probably discovered Bitcoin and crypto somewhere in there. I would love to start there, and then we'll take it into the AI thing and have some conversations about that. But where was your mind in cryptocurrencies and that form of digital tech as you're so immersed in the space, and really you've been trailblazing this digital arena the entire time. So was that on your radar? Was cryptography anything you cared about or something that you paid attention to?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the gateway drug to AI, you might want to say.
That's what I thought would
But
happen. Yeah.
But I think what also happened was as SensaCell went on and it sort of ran also a company that got tons of great attention and great press and were the darling of every design magazine. SensaCell, we built installations all over the world, did all this, but was not a financial success ultimately. I mean, did okay for a bit, but then it didn't. So then again, as it's decaying, just like in the other thing, I had become a digital artist again. At this point, the whole generative digital art thing gets crazy, and I really get into these node-based programs like Max MSP and start doing this generative photography. So then we moved to San Diego, and you'll see on my madbutter.com website, there's the Bangkok era where I took these urban photographs of like these urban cityscapes and then ran them through this algorithm that folded and twisted all the things to create
Very
abstract,
cool.
texture, compositions out of these photographic elements that involve these intricate folding algorithms. Um, and then, so then when we moved back to the U.S. We don't come back to New York because I can't get my son in school, and then my family, then my mom and my dad who are aging, go to live with my sister in L.A. She's in L.A. So we go to near. We can't go to L.A. because the public schools are terrible, but we find in the suburbs of L.A. Outside of San Diego, like a highly rated public school. So we moved to Del Mar, California, and then I pick up the art thing again with this generative photography thing. But instead of urban cityscapes, I'm taking pictures of cacti and strange things that wash up on the beach and textures and patterns from nature and life using the same folding algorithm. And then I discover NFTs, and so I start minting to foundation and learning about NFTs and getting into that culture. And I started attending X Spaces on there. So I moved back to New York in what was it, 2020, I guess. And
During COVID then.
yeah, just as maybe 2021. I'm trying to remember right now exactly what it was, but we started COVID. It was miserable for my son, who had just finally started to make friends. In terms of that whole thing we were just talking about earlier, how did they feel? Did they
Right.
had a little bit of that, what I had, just like being picked up and moved just as they kind of were settling into places. And my son, I think, is still mad about it. And he's just started making friends in Del Mar when COVID came, and he just had to get locked into his room for a year. And then we moved back to New York right as COVID was. So maybe 2021, COVID was ending. And meanwhile, the whole time, I'm fully committed to this generative photography stuff and fully committed to like exploring and understanding NFTs as a thing. And so Jeff Jag and Quantum Variant ran this great, NFT space for a long time. I learned tons about how to mint smart contracts and do all that kind of stuff. And then when AI came, it was funny that Jeff, Quantum Variant stuck with, with algorithm art. At this point, art blocks is like a huge deal and is really important to me. And I understand my art in terms of what art blocks is trying to do, you know, um, that whole sort of like, it's not board apes and stuff like that. It is like, I
Yeah.
think digital art with a long pedigree into the history of digital art, which
Hmm.
I understand very, very well,
Right.
given my background, and to me, that was like, this is the best new, fine art, contemporary art being made today, and it's based on stuff that I absolutely love on algorithmic manipulation. People wrote all these great books on what parameterization and iteration and all these different things meant, and what the algorithm meant, and what it meant to create algorithms and either curate what the algorithm did or try to adjust the algorithm and the art blocks to make it perfect. Loved it. But in the middle of this thing, we start getting early peeps of what AI is doing for it. And then, when AI starts getting good, I just think it's exactly along the lines of everything else I've been doing. It is a way to use a very interesting technology to, to create things where you set up an engine and a system and see what it does, and then kind of either curate the output or just endlessly manipulate it and nudge it in different directions that aren't apparent. Don't change. Don't make an apparent change, but make a system change, which then the output kind of reveals, in sometimes surprising ways, and sometimes ugly ways, and sometimes mesmerizingly beautiful ways that you never anticipated. So all that thing, even going way, way back to my interest in all that photography stuff I told you back when I'm a teenager, to the silk screen, to the printmaking part, to my early, love of digital art and all the possibility of, of digital image making, digital tools to sort of, be an engine for all that. Then the whole, Max MSP node based digital manipulation of photographic imagery to all the way to AI. It's all really that constant thread there that, that it's a technical
Absolutely.
system that mediates your art output, and that it is an active collaborator in your art making, and you are building the engine and nudging it and tweaking it and adjusting it, and taking a look at the output and judging it. So I guess
I
that's the common thread.
I love your art, King. I'm clicking through your website right now. If you guys haven't checked it out, I just pinned it to the top of this space. You just click that link right there. You go see Madbutter's gallery at madbutter.com/gallery. He has a ton of stuff on here that is amazing. So, what tools are you using right now that you think are the tool of the moment that is allowing you to do the cutting edge thing? Where's that energy today that you've been on the whole time? Like what a specific tool, or is it just all AI tools?
Well, I think it's all AI tools, and I try to keep up on all of them enough because I think that's part of my AI art today role. Is to really understand and communicate. But I guess that's for a purpose. I mean, I was really hard on my art. Working hard on my art, and that being the most important thing up until I'd say about 5 months ago. And then now I've started teaching at School of Visual Arts again, and now I seem to be bringing it back into a new job opportunity that I'm just pursuing now. That is in the printing digital, taking AR and printing it. So I think this is going to be a new change. So I've actually kind of slowed down my art and going back into the AI tools as a consultant,
Mm-hmm.
teacher, entrepreneur.
Yeah, you brought up earlier that you started teaching after you had these tools and had just went through school yourself. But I think that's where we are right now, and that's I. You're probably finding yourself in that situation often because you are at the forefront of tech. And anybody listening here, I see so many familiar faces. Hello, everyone. But if you've been, I say this on AI or Today Spaces, you all are so tapped in. I don't know who could be more tapped in than you all because you're actually using and discussing the tools every day. So even somebody that's like the CEO of Runway or, somebody at OpenAI is so focused on their thing, their business, their success. And you guys are really taking it all in, viewing the entire landscape. That's where the value comes from, is that compression of data. Again, this is what we're doing here, is compressing the data to get the most out of it. And you are that guy. It seems like that's just where you go. Are you chasing that, or do you just find yourself there naturally all the time?
I think I swirl around between a bunch of things, and one thing is that I do like being that sort of jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, and I love design, and I love commercial design, and I love really good designers, though I'm never the best designer. I love fine art in all of its manifestations. I'm a regular go to Chelsea galleries and try to stay up in the contemporary art scene. I love cinema. I love, all these different things. And I love programming, even though I'm not that great a programmer. I'm endlessly trying to reinvent myself, take a Python course. I learned, all the easy scripting languages, Flash, all that. So the thing is I circle around all these interests. And I often find that my role seems to be in somebody that knows enough about a lot of different things to sort of help other people who have very specific needs in that niche. And then every once in a while I drop all that and get sucked back into making art. Um, Weirdly enough, for some reason, just thinking about, well, maybe I should probably be making some money doing this, and so I tried to pursue getting hired back to school of visual arts after all these years, and spent a lot of time talking to the president about starting a whole department in AI, and that went pretty far along the lines until I kind of had a crisis, thinking that don't be careful what you wish for. You just might get it, kind of thing. That do I really want to be a school bureaucrat, running a department? It didn't seem the right fit.
I'll echo that to anybody here. I am learning that lesson hard over the last 2 weeks and last 5 years. Even Madbutter is be careful what you wish for. And I'll tell anybody here listening, most inspirational thing I can tell you is your dreams are probably going to come true. You need to be very specific about them, and you need to really think about where you're going, because it's probably going to happen. So the more specific you can be, the closer you're going to be to that ideal situation. If you're just very vague with it, the universe is going to deliver you success. It's going to be in that vague circle, but it's going to be success in that circle. And be careful what you wish for. It's great that you can spot that, Madbutter. I'm hoping to be better at spotting that going forward myself. So I love that you're talking about taking this back to what you know, and you're going into prints. You're talking about teaching this now. What kind of things are you feeling are top of mind that the students want to hear about, and what do you want to teach them right now? What's inspiring to you to go in and talk to students about the space right now? Where do you even start a lecture?
Well, I had this supposition, even though I've argued against it for a long time, and people in the space in the AI Art Today community have effectively argued against it. But I know it's a deep held, what you call it, prejudice or mindset that I can't get away from. And you said, well, what tool is it? Well, Comfy UI. Well, why?
Sure.
Because AI, first it was GANs, because you had to master these intricate Colab notebooks, a whole bunch of impenetrable, AI jargon around transformers and blah, blah, latent walks and, and gradient ascents and blah, blah, blah. And I mastered it just enough, even though I'm not a programmer or whatever, relying on the internet and friends to sort of set up, and I love GANs. I love that whole thing. And I loved how much work it took to make something. And I was proudly saying, like, all you people think AI art, is easy and the machine does all the work. Watch my workflow. I spent, training a data set for 2 months, and then I make this stuff. So the counter argument has been that, that work is not an indication of quality in art. On the other hand, I can't help get past that on some level, that I want to take it past the easy phases.
Mm-hmm.
So Comfy UI has been my sweet spot for that, both as a personal artist and also as an artist and somebody who wants to give something to the community, as a teacher and as somebody that I spent a lot of time mastering Comfy UI, and now I've been teaching it SVA again, continuing ed, and now I'm going to be using it, to build this customer facing website, hopefully. Um, but um, but I guess there is the idea in Comfy UI. It's like, this is not just type in, a dog, riding a bicycle on a beach, drinking a Mai Tai, boom, image back. This is like, nudging, intricate workflow. I mean, I love when Benny gets to push back and says, Comfy UI, that seems like work to me. This is not supposed to be work. This is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be great. And I do understand that people don't have this kind of, I don't know what it's like. Maybe it's like some sort of something from my Protestant heritage, like if it's not painful, it's not worthwhile, sensibility. I don't know what it is, but I do think that Comfy UI for me is a whole way to engage with the technology. Now, Comfy is not the forefront of the technical side. That's the researchers and all that writing all this ridiculous Python code that is incomprehensible. But then there are, of course, generations. There's the Banadoko people that make those into nodes. There's people like me that know how to use the nodes. And then there are there are whole levels of people that are engaging with AI art who are less technical than that. And so again, that's sort of my middle person. I kind of feel like I have my circle of understanding of why you make art and for what reasons and what you need to make your art better. And, my interest and role as a communicator, as a host space, and as a teacher, that means I do kind of understand the full spectrum of that. And I do feel like one of my missions is to get people away from a simple mid-journey prompt to something a little more intentional and a little bit more complex and a little bit more engaged directly with the technology, by learning
Very cool.
Comfy UI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, talking with Blacklight last Friday, Blacklight, congratulations on 1 year in AI. It was great hearing from him how he uses his Comfy flow to make works that really can't be replicated. And he has his own flow that is now his thing, and he can make his IP in his world, Route 47 IP, and he can generate these things on demand, and he's dialed it in to where he knows how to get this product out. I think that's where we are headed for all of this. So you brought up cinema earlier, being a lover of cinema. How do you see AI's role in, you're heavily in the culture. I'm sure you're in people in your community and that you've worked with for years that are in traditional content creation, Hollywood, let's say, or even, just straight up publishing wherever, around you. There's so many journalists, writers, publishers. How do you see AI affecting those industries? And do you share the fears that the people in those industries are concerned about, or do you see this as just the next evolution? And I feel like you're the guy who sees it as the evolution because you just keep seeing these computer tools turn into the everyday thing that everybody's using. You're there super early, but it just becomes another tool. Is that how you see this one unfolding?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I have lots of well-reasoned and well thought through opinions on this, and I've discovered they're all wrong. And anyway, and the whole question is moot. And this is we have to thank Benny for this event, Benny, because Benny says your fascination with Hollywood and whether this is going to help Hollywood or hurt Hollywood is even the wrong question right now in the culture. There are so many other forces around image making that are so much bigger. Minecraft is bigger than Hollywood.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean, like in video games and
Minecraft's
TikTok.
the only movie that's mattered in my godson's life
Yeah,
in years. That's all that
yeah.
matters.
So I think it's certainly an interesting question, one we have all the time. What does this mean if you're in VFX and working for Hollywood? What does it mean for the studios? What does it mean for Netflix even? And and Benny's whole thing is like, there's been a whole revolution in what image making means, and you guys don't even beginning to understand its scope and its cultural power. And I think that's kind of what's going on. So it's almost like too late to ask how this affects Hollywood. This is clearly affecting every aspect of our consumption,
Sure.
either our
Yep.
making and our consumption of images, but in ways that are so much bigger than film. I mean, I'm old now. I have a nostalgia for 1980s avant-garde film, um, you know, or even 60s avant-garde film. Fellini, I've seen every Fellini, every Godard, I've seen every, Fassbinder, every, whatever. So I'm stuck in a certain kind of idea of value that is kind of pretty old. Um, but I do think this whole idea of what AI is doing to Hollywood is in many ways, as Benny keeps telling us, it's the wrong question because Hollywood is already passe.
Well, I guess Hollywood's already dead. And I heard Benny talk about this.
Later on, I mean, Hollywood would do just fine.
It's going to do just fine, but it's dead in the way that we're talking about it. Yeah, exactly. It's already just like we're kicking a dead horse. It's already changed. It's already a car or whatever it is. You just brought up that you said you're stuck in old ways of thinking and like where the value is. That brings me to like copyrights, IP training. How do you feel about that, being somebody that's coming from the art culture, fine art, and knowing that these models are being trained on everything under the sun? Does that bother you? Do you have any opinion on that at all?
It doesn't bother me at all. I understand people's concern with it, and I understand for people with other kinds of inclinations, people that have developed. For instance, I told you that I was never a hand drawer or never a painter or never had any of that masculine skill. I have always been reappropriating, recontextualizing, found work. Even photography, the whole idea that you're grabbing an image, you're not making it. So I do have some sympathy for that artist that I never was and that I admire, the person that can create a personal illustration style. I have a lot of friends, for instance, in the illustration world, including my friend, the artist David Sandlin, who's absolutely incredible, painter and designer of that sort of raw magazine kind of punk rock culture of the age, of adult graphic, novels and all that, of that raw magazine epitomized. But he and a circle of friends, they're endlessly doing covers of the New Yorker because they're top notch illustrators, and all that. Those people, like even David, he looks at my AI stuff and he's kind of excited for me, but at the same time, he's like, oh, it's he's not there. He's and he ran the illustration department for at SVA, and there's a lot of hostility to AI there. I can get it from his perspective. Somebody who spent a lifetime creating a look, that he hand built, with his hands, and either a pen or a marker or a paintbrush or whatever it is. I understand that thing, but for me, I could care less. I've been appropriating imagery, since the 80s. Since everything I did was a found photograph and then re-silk screen to recontextualize it to give it a new look and a new life. But the Warhol thing. So yeah, personally, it's funny. I try to feel empathy for other people's pain. I understand it in certain of the people I know who really I talk to about it. But on a personal note, I was like, yeah, you know what? Reuse, reinvent. I kind of like the photographer idea that there's exhaustion in photography. Every photo's been taken already. So the most interesting photography today is stuff that is like meta photography, stuff that is not bothering to take new photographs, but reworking and rehashing, something from the vast corpus of photography to make new stuff out of collage or out of other, or algorithmic processes or whatever it is,
Photography's always been interesting to me because it's more about the access than anything else, in my opinion. I know like there's great photographers out there that get the best shots, but like you're not getting the best shot of Ali unless you're at the ring, like you're not getting that shot unless you have that backstage access or that lucky vantage point. And it is very interesting that you brought that up, that you're not making that thing, you're capturing that thing. That's a very interesting way of putting it that I've never heard vocalized
Well,
before.
there's many photographers who make a great case for being, that kind of artist rather than an appropriation artist like me. Like, I mean, Bresson in the decisive moment, like he glorified this idea that his particular skill as a photographer was looking through that lens and watching everything align in this millisecond where it made a beautiful composition and having the intuition and instinct and training to capture that. I think that's great. For me, mine was like take a photograph out of a magazine, reshoot it, or take a photograph off the TV, like I was telling you, reshoot it, and then, take it through any number of different processes to reinvent and recontextualize it to something that is, where it's very, very different.
So you did share, and it does seem. I want to say your energy does seem a little different than last time I asked you this question. But when we spoke on the AI Art Today space that we did a couple months ago, you did bring up that you have some concern around the future of AI and where we could be headed. And I don't remember your exact response, but I know it was, I asked you, do you think we're headed towards Skynet or utopia and diseases solved and, blind people seeing again, brain injuries fixed? Where do you see us heading with your knowledge of the past? Where are we headed with this technology?
Yeah, super concerns me. I think Justin said it really well today. He says that you recognize the duality of all these important technologies. And that's why I think, AI is not just another art tool, but it's something on the order of like the internet or nuclear energy or even photography, things that have become bigger than, and photography is bigger than art because photography is both a beautiful way to convey people that are not seen and making them seen, like in the perfect documentary kind of, photography, street photography way. It is also the mechanism by which, surveillance, authoritarian states surveil their people, and both of those things are photography. And there's banal uses of photography for business. And then there's, there's ugly uses of photography in terms of,
they just caught cameras in dorm rooms here at Ohio State just yesterday or the day before. They found a bunch of hidden cameras. So yeah.
So all that stuff, or that, what do you call that when you expose pictures of your ex, that kind of thing, that kind of, I can't remember that kind of genre, like photography is brutal. Like photography is neutral. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's, it's
a revenge porn or something.
Yeah, revenge porn. Yes, yeah. Exactly. And similar, like with nuclear energy, I tend makes me nervous. I don't tend to like it, but I can certainly understand people's argument that it's a renewable source of energy that'll solve things.
So anybody listening, I'll give you the alpha. Nuclear energy's coming like you've never seen before, and
seems like it.
Better be ready. It's already done. I have friends in the industry, and there's little places popping up all over. They're going to have mini reactors all over Ohio in the next 5-6 years, and that's the future. And tons of people are sinking a lot of money into it. It's going to take a lot for it to fail. So you're concerned. How long of a concern timeline do you have? Madbutter, how far out are you thinking?
Well, this is something we spend a lot of time talking about. Like, what is AGI coming soon, or what is AGI even? What is the definition of it?
Yeah, I would love to know that from you as well. What's your thought?
It seems I have this reportorial stance on it. Like, I love saying so-and-so says it's gonna, it's here already. So-and-so says it's here in 2 years. So-and-so, Gary Marcus says it's never coming. You're all a bunch of hype idiots. I love playing both sides of it and asking everybody what they think. But this is part of me. Like I told you, like, I'm a chameleon. Sometimes I don't have opinions. Sometimes I just want to hear what everybody else has to say.
Sure.
And I love bringing it out. I love bringing people out, but sometimes I'm really not sure what I think, how I feel about things myself, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, and then sometimes I've not put words on them or even answered the question. So I'm just like saying the words for the first time and don't really believe what I'm saying. It's kind of how I feel in all of these spaces. I've told you guys that before live it's more like we're talking through, trying to find where we are together, a kumbaya moment of like holding hands and seeing where we are, as opposed to anybody really knowing the full state of and scope of this tech. So
yeah, like to me, it's like trying on a suit. Like,
sure,
what is this idea? What if we go back to Hans Moravec and Mind Children, and we really are. Our purpose on Earth was to get all the way from single-celled amoebas all the way up through, dinosaurs and reptiles and hairy little things running around, hitting each other in the head with clubs, all the way through the Industrial Revolution, all the way to where we are now, only so that we can make the master race of highly sentient, enlightened, immortal, inorganic machines that can travel the universe and that we're the God, we're the thing, we're the perishable thing that our purpose in this sort of teleology, like the study of how things end up, or that there is a vector to all this.
Sure.
So the thing is, do I believe that? Probably not. Everyone's, I'll try it on like a suit. Is how I think of it. I feel a lot. See how it fits.
Yeah.
Like, is it
Yeah.
too tight, too loose? Does it like maybe my butt look big? Whatever.
Yeah. Do I notice it? Am I feeling any rigidness?
Yeah.
Is there any friction in here? Am I free to move? I like that a lot. So yeah. I'll ask the shout out AI Art Today. Anybody listening, I know you're all already hip, but I'm going to give the commercial anyway, like I always do, and give you guys the credit. AI Art Today hosts an amazing space every weekday. They are incredible Madbutter hosts. Terry's here, Benny's here. Go find AI Art Today 420. They're tagged all in our posts. They're posted. They're pinned at the top. They have a post pinned at the top of this space. Sorry, I couldn't find the word space in my headspace. But go follow them and check them out. So I always preface this with, this is an AI Art Today 420 question. And do you treat your AI right?
I'm for treating your AI right because it's just a natural, suspicious thing to do. But again, as a suit to try on, I love
as a suspicious thing to do. So you do it because there's a little anxiety.
Yeah. A little bit of like, I don't walk under a ladder. I do a few other things I know are ridiculous.
Oh, that's funny.
I do think this whole, what is it? The ballast thing, whatever it is, the so-and-so's ballast or whatever it is thing. So it's slightly superstitious, but I actually love Jin's whole take on, don't treat your AI right. It's a damn tool.
Yeah, I love it too.
This anthropomorphizing thing is dangerous and wrong-headed. And people come back from that. So I love the dialogue. To tell you the truth, maybe I like to treat your AI right thing. I am weirdly, fastidiously polite in my interactions to ChatGPT, as if that helps. And it's just kind of stupid. But I did read, Terry and I often talked about Ethan Mollick's book, where he says, treat your AI like a human, whether you believe it or not. Forget the idea of whether it's a bad move to anthropology. You'll get the most out of it if you treat it like a human. And that means I say please when I ask for something, thanks when it asks for something, I compliment when it gave me a good answer. I'm a little stern when it's not, but weirdly, I don't know. I guess that means that that I half buying into this whole thing that that you just treat your AI right or something.
Hey, one thing I'll chime in on, and
this is our CEO Tony Mugabara.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hey, great.
Hey, no, you guys are legends, and thank you for being here. It's funny, I saw a thing the other day that said the people saying please and thank you to OpenAI cost them millions of dollars because they have to process the extra tokens. That's amazing. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there.
I love it. The whole idea that I'm somehow currying favor with it is just the most ridiculous idea. I know it is.
They're like, stop.
They're like, will you please stop?
Yeah, pretty good.
That is really funny. That's why they needed $40 billion. They had to calculate in.
Everybody's being too nice.
Yeah, $150 million just for thank you, please and thank you. So please and thank you budget. So, Madbutter, we've got 20 minutes left. I would love to open up the floor to anybody who's here in just a few minutes. We got a new little segment that we've been doing the past couple of weeks where I do some rapid fire questions and no time to plan for them. He doesn't know anything unless he's been in a previous space, I heard. But I'm going to do some rapid fire questions and see what your answers are. And if you want to pass on one, feel free to say pass.
All right. Okay.
Favorite artist, and I mean, not musician, favorite artist of all time?
Maybe Robert Irwin or James Turrell.
James Turrell's so fire. Jeez.
Yeah. I love what they've done to your whole notion of art.
Yes.
Oh, but rapid fire.
Favorite band of all time?
Can I say the Butthole Surfers?
You can say whatever you want. Favorite movie?
Third Man.
Favorite TV show?
Huh. Favorite TV show? Favorite TV show? Breaking Bad, maybe.
Great answer. Where's the best cuisine of the places you have lived?
Thailand.
What's the best food there?
Oh my God, there's so much good food. Larb.
Favorite restaurant in New York?
Favorite restaurant. I have a new favorite one. One called Nudie Branch on First Avenue. It's so good.
Had to write it down before I ask another question. Favorite AI tool right now?
Comfy UI.
Favorite AI creator right now?
Favorite AI creator. Let me think. I think the top of my legend list might be Mario Klingemann.
Amen. And if you want to give a Bitcoin prediction price, Bitcoin 2040.
2040.
I know it's a long way away, but it's
I'm so bad at
fast.
crypto. I think it's going to do great. I think it's going to be half a mil.
Amen. Amen. So I agree. I think we're going way up there. I would love to know, you've been experimenting on chain and you've been releasing works. Can you tell me about what your Web3 experience has been like to date? Where are you publishing works? I know you mentioned some places earlier. You've got 8 or 9 videos on Rad TV. What are you looking for in Web3 and what's your energy around it? What do you think it is delivering to you as a creator and artist?
I think it's a massive set of turmoil. Like certainly everything that's strong about it is going strong, but I do think that it's in a funk. I think the NFT market is not a great place for fine art. I think it's a fine place to churn and burn, whatever PFPs or whatever. There's some people doing okay. I'm super disappointed in it. Super disappointed with decentralization as a thing. I think it's the most noble idea ever. I think in practice, it is like the worst sort of ruled by bureaucracy, and it kind of I was the first to tell you magical thinking about decentralize this and that, but I'm disappointed that it hasn't turned out to be deliver.
It's hard, and it seems, at Rad, we kind of think of ourselves as a Web 2.5 company, but we enable a ton of things that a straight up Web3 company that was doing every single thing on chain could not. And the tech's just not there yet. We still have a ways to go and we're all plugging away at it. So we'll get there. And I understand your sentiment and totally agree right now. What is your biggest friction point in your creation process right now? Where are you seeing hurdles that you feel are unnecessary or unnecessary delays in your creation process?
Yeah, I mean, I think the art market is dead. I think the art market is dead in physical. I think it's dead in NFTs. I think it's dead in gallery. The gallery environment's dead. I think for emerging artists, it's a very tough time to be an artist, and I think that's too bad. I wish people valued art more. I wish there was more interest in owning and collecting, sharing it. I do think NFTs seem like the most exciting new way to change that, but it didn't seem to. I don't know. It's in the dumps.
Do you have any idea about an answer or any, maybe not even an opinion? You want to try a suit on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm new interest in physical again, maybe, and also I think I'm missing the whatever it is, aura, from an original work of art, even if it's a reproduction. Of course, aura, as it was used by the great thinker Walter Benjamin, like anything that's mechanically reproduced doesn't have an aura. A painting does, and that was a huge thing. But I think physical things, as opposed to looking them on monitors, have their own kind of aura that I miss. So I'm at least thinking that they're excited to see some innovation in AI and NFT and this whole world come back to people really physically experiencing art again. I don't know.
What was the name you said of the person that coined the paintings have auras that and not mechanical?
Oh, that's Walter Benjamin. He's a great thinker. Died terribly during the Nazi era, but really wrote the Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. Another great talk that. Hey, John and Simon, here I see you're here. I think you missed the part where I was talking about the important influence you had on me when I was at MFA Computer Art. So there you go. Hope your ears are burning. But another great article that John had us read back in those formative days in the 90s when I was trying to understand. Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction is probably one of the most important articles ever written in terms of what digital image making, and not to mention printmaking, but digital imaging in particular, is kind of wrapping its head around.
So you have any advice for artists that are getting started today, whether they're coming from traditional background or diving into the digital world? Any advice for them getting started, or are you saying choose a new path? What are you thinking?
I would say by all means choose a new path if you can. But if you're like me and you love making art and it is its own sense of satisfaction, then I would say, do it and enjoy it. And if you're going to be disappointed, well, then you're probably in the wrong. If you're easily disappointed and that ruins you, then you're probably in the wrong field.
Or in it just for money. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Or you're not being what I think is an artist, meaning that you have to do this and you love it so much.
Yeah.
And when you see other people's good art and you understand what they're doing and you vibe with it, there's no more important feeling in the world, Or when someone sees your art and really sees it,
Amen.
You're like, you get that vibe connect that is invaluable.
That feeling when you have that new thing that you made as a creator and it's done and you walk away from the machine for a minute and you get to come back in an hour and listen, or maybe you go on a walk. I don't know if there's anything better than that moment for myself, just knowing that I have a thing that nobody else has seen and I made the thing and it's in my pocket, kind of like I got this thing that God gave me that I can share with the world whenever it comes time, and I don't have to do anything on anybody's time. It's mine. It's a wonderful feeling, and I agree with that. Keep creating, everyone.
Exactly. And I know that art is about communication, so you make it for yourself and only you see it. That's sad, and sometimes that happens because I don't like hustling it, and there is some mastery of the markets and of the communication side of getting your shows in galleries, of communicating your art, of getting people to pay attention to it. That's important, and some people are not good at that. But because it doesn't happen in a vacuum, so I do understand all the importance of that. But it's just not the part that gets me up in the morning.
Amen. All right, we're going to open it up. We got 10 minutes left. Does anybody have a question for King Madbutter? Madbutter, anything you would like to talk about? Anything you'd like to promote? Anything that you want to send people to check out?
No, just come by the space. That's all I'm saying. I love our community, our AI art today community. I think it's really vibrant, really diverse.
Amen. Amazing
people coming from different directions with different goals and different sides in it. The kind of sharing that happens in that thing is a hive mind on the state of AI art today that I can't get anywhere else. And so those of you who are not in it, come be part of the gang.
Absolutely. It's the best community I've been a part of. It's trumped every community I've joined since I've been on X, and the AI art today 420 spaces are one of my favorite places to be on the internet. So thank you all for showing up every day, King Madbutter. I really appreciate your presence, your knowledge, your commitment, your energy. You guys have been amazing. And, all of you, everybody in the space right now, Terry, shout out Terry, Teresa, who else we got here? Sacred Cloud. Hello. I still owe you an NFT. Whenever you're ready, you just drop your Ethereum address in our DMs and I will send it over. Foxtrot. Hello. ABC DJ. What's up? David. Hi. Blacklight. Hi. Justin. Hi. Demon. Hi. Mars. What's up? Benny. Hello. Tony, anything you would like to add before we wrap up here?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's always great hearing everything about someone's journey. I always like to hear, how we can make people's lives better. What is there anything that is, maybe it's part of the rapid fire questions. If you could have anything as part of your workflow or solution or daily life, any problem that you wanted solved, what is it? And can we help with that? Or is it just some other, general thing that you would love to have?
Well, I got plenty of angst and issues with everything that's going on in the world today. So, but I think we've learned in AR community not to go there. But yeah, to keep people with diverse political opinions, happy and feel that they're home there. But yes, plenty of angst and worry going on in my life about things that need to be changed and fixed in the world, and very involved with that. But that's not really what we're going to talk about, I guess. So I'll stay away from that.
Any tools that someone could just build for you in your workflow, or that you just feel like, man, if I had this would be so great?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff is building. I think for me, part of the whole art evolution is that when Comfy started to become less important to the community and more these.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, please be kind for the space and let our speaker continue to talk before interrupting.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just finished that idea.
Sorry about that.
I do think that the video tools for Little Me, to me, I really think they're exciting, but they seem to be a step down in terms of just simple prompting. I do see a whole new wave of video tools emerging that give you that kind of complexity and engagement with under the hood, and I think that's exciting. I think that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Nice, awesome.
Pup, Teresa, go ahead with your questions. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Speaking of multimedia and technology, especially in filmmaking, if you've seen Back to the Future Part 2, they did the whole Vista Glide camera system for the split screen of two different characters that played by the same actor. I don't know if y'all knew that or not.
No, I did not know that. Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Cool.
I've actually talked to Jeffrey Weissman, who played George McFly in Part 2, and he said there was a small earthquake during the filming of the scene, so they had to make sure all the props were in the same spot, so they wouldn't show up twice in the final shot.
Very interesting.
Yeah, a little bit of movie trivia for you there.
Absolutely.
And speaking of your project, Walt Disney built Disneyland, and that was his thing. And he would always look for, he was always wanting to plus it or improve things in the park, adding things, taking things out. He said Disneyland is not a museum; it'll always be changing and growing.
Let's go.
Absolutely. Teresa, I know you jumped up for a second. Did you have a question? Maybe she left. I think she might have left. Yeah, maybe it added her too late. Sorry I missed you, Teresa, if you listen to this back. Does anybody else have any questions for King Madbutter before we go? King, I have enjoyed our conversation so much. I love having your backstory. I cannot tell you how much I enjoy getting to know the AI Art Today crew, because I listen to you all every morning, and having the background on your all's lives gives me added context, and really makes me feel like I know what the words you're saying mean more when I have this context, and that goes for all of you. Mars, you're next. I'm coming for you. We got to do a space Mars.
The OG Mars. Yeah.
I'm gonna invite Mars up right now.
Yeah. Also appreciate you. You doing these spaces, and for what you guys are doing at Rad TV is fantastic. I think it's such an important, contributor to the ability. Speaking of which, you were talking about what artists can do in their exposure. I talked about the pain points there. I think Rad TV is in itself you're part of the solution there. So thank you for that. I think that you're spending a lot of time rethinking about how artists basically get their word out, how they get engagement, and how they build audiences. So, man, I got to say, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for thanking us. We're grateful to be here, and we're grateful to be a part of this community. We care about your all's success, and we hope that you see that. And if you guys want to see something from us, please do not hesitate to tell us. If you want to see something different from us that we're not doing, do not hesitate to reach out. My DMs are open everywhere. Discord, my personal DMs are open. Rad NFTV, our accounts everywhere are open for DM. Reach out. If you want to schedule a call, you want to learn more about Rad TV. If you have no idea about Web3 or blockchain, I am happy to help you. I'll take every step with you, no rush at all. And you're not just trusting some random guy on the internet. You can go to LinkedIn. You can look at my name. You see who I am. You know who you're talking to. You can see my face. You see everything about me. I'm not just somebody you're trusting. You can know that you're dealing with a company and not some anonymous individual trying to hustle you. So feel free to reach out. And I'd say anybody, if you're a creator and you haven't made a Rad TV channel yet, go check it out, radtv.com. We are making tons of changes. We have massive updates coming and massive updates that have been rolling out. Hope you all are enjoying them. If you guys want to see anything, please let us know. Madbutter, madbutter.com, Madbutter6, and Madbutter Digital. If you use those handles, you can find him everywhere. He's on TikTok. He's on Instagram. He's on X, website, madbutter.com. Galleries pinned at the top of the space. He's got prints for sale. He's got NFT works for sale. He's making incredible art. He is a real joy to listen to and be a part of their spaces every morning, weekdays, AI Art Today 420. So go follow them. Follow Madbutter. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And King Madbutter, anything to say before we shut it down?
Just treat your AI right.
I love it. I love it. All right. Everyone have a great weekend. Have a great Friday. Thanks so much for stopping in, Madbutter. You're awesome, and we appreciate your time. Thank you for showing up.
Thanks for doing the space. Appreciate it.
Have a good weekend, everyone. See you next time.
Rad TV, we're never gonna stop.